Hey, it's Juck. Today, some recruiting news. We got some new names in the search for the running back coach. Dillon Davis joins us to talk practice, Kadyn Proctor and the issue with the current system, and a whole lot more on a mega Sunday Juck on Bucks. Let's get it. And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback. The truth is Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those. You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country. So just as I'm settling in here to the chair to get started with the show, I just caught a story, and the Miami athletic director just came out and said that, basically just a full-throated support of the ACC and Miami staying in the ACC, which blows my mind. Of course, we know Florida State has sued the ACC to try to get out of the grant of rights to leave the conference, and now Clemson has jumped on board with them. I think most of us thought that Miami would be the next one to kind of jump in and get on that bandwagon to try to get out of that grant of rights, put more pressure on the ACC to try and break them down so that those three schools in particular could get to either the SEC or the Big Ten. I think Florida State is going to end up in the Big Ten, and I think that Clemson's going to end up in the SEC. And I thought Miami was going to join them in the plan here. But this guy is apparently clueless because I just have no idea what his motivation is here, other than maybe he wants to finally win an ACC championship, which they still haven't done in 20 years since they've moved from the Big East to the ACC, which is just absolutely pathetic and hilarious, because when they moved from the Big East to the ACC with Virginia Tech, who at the time was really cooking, we pretty much kind of all thought that they were going to go and just run the conference. And the fact that neither of them have won that ACC championship in all this a couple decades is just insane. But this guy is making a big mistake here, because the clock's ticking and the spots in the Big Ten and the SEC are going to fill up. Now, I think eventually Miami's going to get a spot in one of those two conferences, but I don't know what he's waiting on. I really have no idea, and that story just kind of throws me off guard. But Saturday, the Bucks had their final practice of the week, and in attendance at the Woody was one Mr. Jim Tressel, sweater vest and all, hanging out with Ryan Day. Got a picture here to show you that. And he was also photographed with athletic director Ross Bjork. And he gave a little speech to the team, which was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I think I played it on a loop. And I got a really nasty comment today from somebody in the comments of one of the videos who was pretty much making fun of me and you for, being a little too involved in Ohio State football. And it kind of brought me down for a second. And when I saw that video, I thought, you know what? I don't care what anybody says, because the way that video makes me feel, I wish I could play it for you.
Carry the banner. Be proud, because when you get old and come back and look, you're going to see, I can't believe God gave me a chance to be a Buckeye, because there's nothing like it.
But when you hear someone like Tressel talk about Ohio State football, I don't know, just it hits me different than anything else in my life does. It's a totally different feeling, and I love it. So that guy can pound salt. He had a Columbus Blue Jackets profile pic too. So I don't know, man. I think that's kind of weird to make fun of your fellow state brothers, whatever. Having Jim Tressel around the program makes me feel all sorts of awesome. And I absolutely love that Ryan Day is kind of developing this. I don't know if they've not had a good relationship up to this point, maybe not tight, but it seems like maybe it's getting a little tighter. And that's great. We talked about the special teams advice that Tressel gave him that Ryan Day really liked. And that was awesome. So always good to have a guy like him around. In your corner, talking to the team, fantastic. There was also some really excellent recruits that came through this week. Number one wide receiver in the country, DeCorian Moore, was in attendance, and he is committed to LSU, but he's narrowed down the list of schools he's talking to 4 schools: LSU, Ohio State, Texas, and Oregon. And he was in attendance. Apparently he had a great visit. The Sanchez family was in town this week, and they are recruiting DeCorian hard. And hey, I got my money on them to do a good job and get that locked down. I certainly wouldn't bet against them. Vernell Brown, wide receiver out of Orlando, top 100 prospect, was also in town. He's crystal balled to the Buckeyes. That kid's just absolutely dynamic with his ball in the hand, with the ball in his hands, and he runs the ball, returns kicks. He's a wide receiver, just a really dynamic kid. And again, crystal ball to the Buckeyes. But he also has Florida State and Miami high on his list, which are the same two schools that fellow wide receiver from Florida, Jamie French, has on his final three list. And Jamie French also crystal ball to the Buckeyes. That's a top 3 wide receiver in the country, just a dynamic playmaker. And when we talk about Ohio State, Florida State, and Miami, Jeremiah Smith came down to those 3 schools for him too. And the Miami and Florida State fans just got to be, I don't know, Brian Hartline keeps crushing their hopes and dreams. And hey, it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch. The best wide receivers in the country want to come play for Hartline and the Buckeyes, and that's got to hurt. As for the class of 2026, a 5-star linebacker out of Georgia named Tyler Atkinson was in town, and he had a good talk with James Laurinaitis and Larry Johnson. They pitched him on being a big impact 3-down player, lining up all over the place. This kid's currently 6'2", 205, and his highlight reel features him rushing and playing linebacker. He is something special. He jumps off the screen, and he's playing 6A ball in Georgia, so one of the toughest divisions in the entire country. And this dude just pops off the screen. His speed, he's dynamic as heck. And I'm telling you, take a look at this kid, Tyler Atkinson. I did not look at him before I saw this, and when I did, I said, oh, okay, I get it. This kid got invited to the All-American Bowl as an 8th grader, the only kid that's ever done that. And you can see why when you watch him. Now, he is going to camp at Ohio State, and he's going to turn that camp into a long visit when he comes, so that's a really good deal. It's really good to get in on this kid early, and he seems to be pretty interested. Also out of the class of 2026 that we talked about the other day, Rock Hill from Akron-Hoban. He's a cornerback that is the top 10 overall player in that class. He was in attendance at the Woody Hayes, and he got himself a crystal ball from one Mr. Bill Kurlick, who everybody loves, from Bucknuts. This was his 10th trip from Akron down to Ohio football headquarters in Columbus. So it seems like this dude is really big on the Bucks. But I did see that he tweeted today that he was in Notre Dame as well. And, you know, you always kind of worry when the Catholic school kids in Ohio are at Notre Dame. But I think he's a Buckeye lean, and he got his crystal ball from Bill Kurlick. So I feel pretty comfortable. But, hey, the future is looking brighter and brighter every single week. And if this was maybe, 5 years ago, any single one of these kids that I just brought up would have been really big talk for us. And I'm just recognizing here that this is what it looked like when Alabama kind of started the dynasty and started rolling. It looked just like this. I followed it closely with seething rage and jealousy. And this is what it looked like. We're just tearing it up on the recruiting trail. This is insane. I post a lot of my little snippets on recruiting on other social media platforms. And inevitably fans from other places come on and say, Ohio State's always recruited great. You just can't do it on the field and blah, blah, blah. And it's true that Ohio State has always recruited very well, better than most, certainly better than our rivals. But this is another stratosphere. This is different. This is the best we've ever seen in the history of the program. There's never been a time where we've been in on so many number 1s, 2s, and 3s at their positions. There's never been a time where it's been quite this elite. And the fact that this is coming under Ryan Day's regime, granted, you get a big assist from Urban, who really elevated the national recruiting and opened a lot of doors and kind of opened a lot of people's eyes as to what was possible at Ohio State on a national recruiting scale. And so he gets a massive assist for starting the ball rolling for that. But the level that Ryan Day and his staff have taken it to is just incredible. And things are looking really good. But I'm guessing a lot of people never would have thought that would have happened under Ryan Day. You know, he's very unassuming. I don't think a lot of people have a whole lot of respect for him as a football coach. And it's weird because he's a very accomplished coach. I mean, his knock is not winning big games. I mean, just because he hasn't done it yet doesn't mean he can't do it, and I think he will. But when we talk about recruiting, you cannot say a word about him there, man. This guy can recruit his butt off. You talk about excellent recruiters around the country, and I don't feel like he gets mentioned in that same stratosphere. You know, they talk about guys like Dan Lanning, and I mean, hey, Ryan Day is crushing Dan Lanning, really. You know, Oregon's doing well; they're doing better, but Ryan Day's doing better than them. There's no doubt about it. So I'm really happy to see all these guys are interested, and the interest just keeps growing, and that's what's so exciting. You know, just getting that linebacker Atkinson, you know, that's a number 2 overall player out of Georgia, just coming up, you know, 2 years away from graduating high school, wants to come up and see Ohio State. And the atmosphere that they got going on at practice is, you know, it's competitive, and they're really loving it. They're selling it to the kids. It's working. Whatever they're doing is working, man. This is really, really cool. But the search for the running back coach, you know, it continues, and it looks like Ryan Day is on tier B in his running back search. A couple of names came out today, and that is Marquell Blackwell. That's a running back coach out of South Carolina, and Curtis Looper. He's the running back coach out of Missouri. I took a look at these two candidates who, admittedly, I had never heard of before those names leaked. But the Looper guy, this guy's got some recruiting chops here. He was down at Auburn, and he landed some pretty big dogs, and not just at running back. This guy had a almost 5-star defensive lineman that he led recruiting on at Auburn and locked him down, and a really high-level offensive lineman as well. So this is a guy who's not just recruited running back, but can cross-recruit positions and, you know, has evidence in the past that he can do it at a very high level. And that's at Auburn, which is, you know, it's a school that can get some good recruits, but not a machine, you know. So pretty solid for a tier B type guy. You're not going to get your pick of the litter at this point. We've talked about it all week. It's at the point in the calendar where you're asking someone to, you know, do something that they don't want to do to their employee, which is dip out on them after practice has started. Makes you look bad. It's not a cool thing to do. But Dillon Davis, beat reporter for the Delaware Gazette, he joined me, and he had a really interesting take on the running back position that it hadn't crossed my mind, and I have not heard anybody say anything like it. So I sat down and talked to him for about 15 minutes, and we kind of hit on a lot of different subjects, and I want to show you that. But take a listen for his thought on the running backs coach. I think it's an interesting thought, and it really had me thinking for quite a while after we got done talking. Have a listen. Dillon Davis from the Delaware Gazette. And here he is joining us again. Thanks so much for coming on, buddy. Let's hop right in. So Marvin Harrison, again, getting trashed by the media for not participating in Pro Day. We all know full well his draft stock isn't going to move one way or the other if he does this. And it's kind of pointless for him to even participate. Nonetheless, they did this with him, with the combine, with the press conference that he supposedly stood them up on when he wasn't even in town. They never corrected that story, by the way. And now we're hearing it all over the place about Marvin Harrison not participating in Pro Day. What's he got to hide? I mean, just ridiculous stuff. What I want to know is, Marvin Harrison strikes me as someone who nobody's ever worked harder. I've never seen anybody work harder, just from what we see and what we hear. Guys do podcasts at the end of the day. Marvin's always in the background. He's the only one there. He's working. And it's just, you know, we hear stories about him on Friday and Saturday nights there, and they had to make him bring somebody in to be with him in there. It just seems to me like this guy is the hardest working dude on the team. And I really hate him getting this trash talked about him. But in your time there, and you've been there 5 years now covering the beat, have you ever seen anybody work as hard as Marvin or harder than Marvin?
No, not at all. And I'll say that I've never seen anybody work harder than Marvin. And part of that is, I mean, we get to see Marvin working because he's out on the field doing it. But I can guarantee nobody's worked harder than Marvin now. For the people who work as hard, probably, maybe, I don't know. That's a high bar to reach, but nobody's worked harder than him. All those nights, Wednesday nights during game weeks, where interviews are happening after practice, 6:30 or whatever like that, and Marvin's catching 100 balls on the Monarch, which is the modern day jugs machine behind us. And it's every time. I mean, up until now, when he's getting ready for the draft and whatnot, I don't know. I can't recall a time where I walked into the Woody for any reason and he wasn't on the jugs machine or on the Monarch machine catching passes. It's just it's a legendary work ethic that he got from his father, who understood what it took to be a Hall of Fame wide receiver and went out and did it. And Marvin Harris is obsessed with his craft. He doesn't do anything. There are times where I'm like, go home, go enjoy being a kid while you can. But that's just not him. He's obsessed with his craft, and for people to try to pick that apart because he didn't want to do this, look, there's nothing for him to prove. There's literally nothing for him to prove. We've gotten so far away from the era where, watch his tape. He has 2 years of the best tape you'll ever see a receiver put together. Just go watch that. He doesn't need to show it to you, in shirts or in a shirt and T-shirts. Go watch that tape. So there's nothing he needs to do. It's just we get draft fatigue. People want to create narratives because they're fun to talk about because we get tired of talking about the same things. And it's ridiculous.
Right.
It happens every year. It's no surprise. It happened with CJ last year. It is what it is.
Yeah. Dillon, you weren't able to attend Pro Day this year, but one of the guys that worked out was Xavier Johnson. I think he's a really interesting prospect because obviously he's an awesome dude. He's made some big plays. He's not the greatest athlete, but just a great high character guy and seems super driven. I'm really hoping that he gets a shot. What's your take on him as a player and as a person in the 5 years you've been there? You've obviously been there the whole time he's been there.
He might not be as talented as this guy, but he reminds me a lot of Terry McLaurin in the sense that you're going to get every last ounce out of him. Whatever he has, you're going to get it from him. He's an effort guy. I mean, he's a hard worker. And so whoever drafts, that's not to downplay his talent either. He's a talented guy. He's made some big plays for Ohio State and some big games too. You think about the Notre Dame game, you think about the Peach Bowl in 2022. So he's made some big plays. That's not to say he's not a talented guy, but you just know that you're going to get a worker and a guy who is going to maximize his talent. And there's a place for that on any NFL roster. So I'm excited for him. Certainly excited for him because he deserves it. Talking about Marvin, nobody's outworked Marvin. There's not a better person I've been around in my 5+ years on this beat than Xavier Johnson. He truly is a world-class human being. So he deserves it. I'm rooting for him. And then there's a place, like I said, there's a place on a roster for him because he's talented enough, and that whatever the talent he does have, you're going to get it from him because he's going to work hard. So excited for him. And as you mentioned, maybe going up to Cleveland will be pretty cool for him. So.
Oh, I would love it. Love it. Last time you were on, you were kind of talking about Brandon Inniss being your sleeper. And since then, we've now heard Ryan Day rave about him, and then we just heard the other day Brian Hartline rave about him. Have you talked to Brandon?
Yeah. We talked to him on yesterday. So.
Oh, okay. Take it away. Let's hear about Brandon.
Yeah. It was kind of funny, to talk about Brandon, when I spoke to you last, and then for Ryan to kind of talk about him. That was pretty cool. But yeah, we talked to Brandon on Thursday. Still looks fantastic. And Brandon sounds like he's of the mindset that he's going to be a bigger player in this team, and he's kind of taken that as such. Talking to Brian Hartline. We were talking to Brian Hartline, and he talked about Brandon kind of being the leader of, receivers getting back to doing more celebrating. Brian kind of mentioned that they got to a point where success was just, it is what it is, and then they take it and they go on because that's what they're expected to do. And they're starting to celebrate things more this spring, celebrating their victories, running a good route, making a play, all those kind of things that maybe they just expected in the past. They're starting to celebrate more. And Brian said that Brandon was kind of at the forefront of that. So it sounds like Brandon's really taking on more of a leadership role, that he's kind of asserting himself in that room as you'd want a guy to. So I tell you what, with Mecca moving outside, with Carnell probably being outside as well, although both those guys can certainly play inside, that inside spot's wide open for Brandon Inniss. And by all accounts, from what we've heard, he's probably, elevating himself into that position where he's probably going to be that guy, at least, often. So it was good stuff. And Brandon, Brandon, he's not a stranger to having a lot of fanfare coming into Columbus. He was a very big-time recruit. Coming in his own right. So, and him and Jeremiah actually knew each other growing up too. So, it's really cool that he'll have, kind of that mentor role over Jeremiah Smith as well. So,
There's a lot of doubters on how Emeka's going to fare playing outside. What's your take on that?
I understand, like, so naturally, because Emeka's so good inside, I think that's where I think that naturally suits him. I think that's probably where he's better off. To say that he's not going to succeed on the outside, I wouldn't say that, because I wouldn't bet against Emeka in any way, shape, or form. I know he's capable of succeeding outside, but he's so good inside that I wish they could keep him there. But I think that it's probably best for what they have right now. Now, Jeremiah Smith might change that.
Mm-hmm.
So, if the more that Jeremiah Smith elevates himself, and I don't want to say I don't want to disrespect other guys, but personally, I think it is Jeremiah Smith. If that's a guy who plays outside with Carnell, and then you have the ability to move Emeka, but they're going to move those guys around a lot. Brian Hartline said there's two guys that he feels comfortable moving around and asking to do all kinds of different things. That's Emeka and Carnell Tate. He said the other guys, he's not ready to put that kind of stuff on them yet. He just wants them to be great at one thing instead of trying to be good at a bunch of different things. But Emeka and Carnell Tate, he said, he feels good about moving them all around. So while Emeka might be outside, he's going to still play. They're going to find ways to give him the ball in the slot against some of those guys, those smaller corners. Safeties and whatnot, what have you. So, I don't think he's gonna. I think he'll fare fine outside. But I don't. He's so good inside that I understand why that's a lofty bar to clear for what he's done inside. Definitely.
CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles are kind of battling for a spot. I did watch CJ in a press conference. I think, were you there? Did you talk to CJ? Yeah. Okay. It seemed to me like he was a little uncomfortable about people calling that a battle because they're buddies or anything. But since you were there, did you get that same vibe?
Absolutely. It seemed like, he was uncomfortable with a lot of questions about, the way things were phrased. As he was kind of minimizing the whole thing, that it's just business as usual, that he's continuing to get better, and that things will happen how they happen. Personally, I don't think that's maybe the right way to go about it, because he is in a battle. One thing he did say that I'm really excited about, because I'm a big CJ Hicks guy, I can't wait to see him on the field. But one thing he did mention is 4-3 looks where him and Sonny are on the field together with Cody Simon, and I love the idea of that. Now, growing up in the '90s, that's throwback, Big Ten football right there, right? 3 linebackers on the field. Especially those 3 linebackers on the field.
Wow.
Today's football is not really like that as much anymore, but there are certain situations, obviously, where it still behooves them to have 3 linebackers on the field, and I can't wait to see CJ and Sonny on the field together if that's ultimately how that plays out. But CJ, downplaying these things, he is in a battle. I've got news for CJ Hicks. Sonny Styles is the prohibitive favorite to win that battle too, because they're not going to keep him off the field unless CJ just blows them away. So. I get that they're friends. They've been roommates, so I get all of that. But like they're those two are in a direct battle for playing time, and for this being year 3 for CJ Hicks, it's time. It's time to go. And sometimes that's unfair to say, like, well, it's year 3 for this guy, whatnot, when you're at a place like Ohio State and some of the players you had before you. But the reality is, it is year 3 and it's time to go. So. I fully expect CJ to be on the field in different ways, but he is in a battle with Sonny. Make no mistake about it. And Sonny's played a good amount of football already, so it's gonna be tough to keep him off the field. So, but again, maybe those 4-3 looks, they both get on the field, and I'd be really excited to see that. But yeah,
it would be awesome. Carnell obviously he had an awesome season last year. But he kind of feels like the forgotten man in just what we're hearing, what we're talking about. But I did hear Hartline, like you said earlier, say that it seems like he trusts him an awful lot. He was saying that, Emeka and Carnell, he's going to have moving all over the place. What's your take on Carnell heading into the season?
Well, Carnell had a really good season last year for what it was, for what they asked him to do.
Yeah.
When I made the comment on the last show that everybody's expecting he'll just take a next step forward. And that's not a foregone conclusion. It doesn't have to happen like that. But it sounds like, from what I heard from Brian Hartline, that he has really had a good offseason and is taking that step up to being, right there in line with the Meccas in terms of top 2 receivers. So I was glad to hear that. Talking to Brian Hartline, and he made the comment that Carnell and Emeka are the only ones that he's willing to move around. So I thought that was very telling. That Carnell's in that role, but Carnell's just such an unassuming guy. He's soft spoken. He doesn't speak a whole lot. We haven't gotten a chance to see Carnell or talk to him a whole lot, since he's been here. And that's a guy who, was, a player last year. He saw the field. We never got really a chance to talk to him. So it was kind of good getting to talk to Carnell, just, and learn a little bit more about him. But he's such a soft-spoken guy. He's not a man of very many words. But certainly from what it sounds like, this guy's ready to take the next step and be, a legitimate number 2 behind Emeka. And that's a good spot for him. And he's going to need to produce because, again, everybody's assuming that he's going to, and I think he will. But it's not a given. But he's going to have a chance to have a really big year. He's going to need to.
Yeah. Coach Day's press conference the other day, you let it off. And what you wanted to know was, when did he know about Tony Alford's decision to leave? He didn't really answer, and that's fine. I can understand why he doesn't want to answer that question. What really irritated me about the whole Tony Alford situation, aside from the obvious, is the timing of it puts Ohio State in a position now where they're now asking somebody else to leave their job and kind of screw over their employer. And that's tough to do when you're Ohio State, because the candidates you want are guys that are at equal kind of positions. You're trying to pull from the Oklahomas and the Alabamas, and that kind of dings somebody's reputation when they do somebody like that. So we're in this situation now where, it looked like the DeMarco thing was close to done. And then, that falls through. Oklahoma comes up big for him. The Stan Drayton thing doesn't look like it's going to be able to work out with the $2.5 million the money that Temple still owes him. What are you hearing? Where are we going here?
Well, I wouldn't put the Stan Drayton thing to bed just yet.
Okay.
I don't think that it's dead yet. Certainly there are obstacles that everybody's aware of that by now. But I wouldn't put it to bed yet. But if that falls through, if that's something that can't happen, I'm not really sure where Ohio State goes from here. Honestly, I don't really know what's out there, what's left out there from what I've heard. I don't, then it begs the question of, do they go anywhere? Do you risk overpaying a guy who's not going to come here, for a 1-year contract? So you risk overpaying a guy and locking into a guy for multiple years that maybe you believe in or kind of believe in or think maybe can do the job and whatnot. And is it even worth doing that at this point? I know it's not ideal. Everything about the situation is not ideal. That was kind of the point, like you mentioned about, the timing of Tony Alford's departure, is that it couldn't have been any less ideal. But between Ryan and Chip, more Ryan, I don't think it's worth going and overpaying a guy from Toledo or somewhere like that just to come here and fill a position where otherwise maybe probably wouldn't be here at Ohio State just to fill the position. I think with that running back room being a veteran-laden group, I think that they can figure it out. They can piece it together rather than pay a guy and lock into a guy for 3+ years who otherwise maybe wouldn't be here if it weren't for the timing and the situation. So.
That's an interesting point. I really hadn't heard anybody say that before, but you bring up an interesting point. You don't want to settle for someone and have to bring them in and sign them up for 3 years when you could have gotten your first pick in the off season or next off season. So that's an interesting thing. Dillon, that's all the questions I got. Do you need to add anything else? Anything else we should know about that you saw that we didn't cover?
No. The only other thing I would ask or speak to is Jermaine Matthews continues to be one of the players who impresses me and excites me more than anybody on the team. It's a good spot to be in for Ohio State because of how deep they are in the secondary. But I think Jermaine Matthews starts for 98% of college football. Just from what we saw this last year, and we got a chance to talk to him last year and talking to him yesterday. He's a little bit more, you can tell he started coming to his own, just comfortable in his own body now in college football. And that kid's never lacked confidence in the first place. So it's all starting to come together for Jermaine Matthews, and we already saw that he's a really good player. So that guy is going to be a star at Ohio State. We might have to wait a little bit to see it, in a full manner. He'll see the field this year as part of the rotation, without a doubt, and obviously if injuries pop up. But that guy's going to be a star in the waiting, and I want to throw that in there. That talking to him yesterday, I'm just even more impressed than I already was, and the Ohio State fans should be excited about that kid because he's a star. Tim Walton called him yesterday, talking to Tim Walton, said he's next in line, and that's the best way to put it. Right behind Denzel and IGB and Jordan Hancock, he's next in line, and he's going to be a good one when he gets there.
That's awesome. Dillon, thanks so much for joining us again, buddy. We really appreciate the update. Have a great day, bud.
My pleasure. Thank you. You as well.
So really interesting from Dillon there. I had not thought about that. I hadn't heard anybody say that. I'm speaking, of course, about the running back coach situation and the fact that maybe they may choose to not hire somebody. Because if you think about it, hiring somebody for a 1-year deal is probably not going to be feasible because you have to pull them away from their job. And that's probably, they're probably going to want a 2-year deal minimum. And if it's not someone you're really sold on, do you want to bring them in and sign up for 2 years with them? Or would the better option be to go without that running back coach, have Ryan Day coach the running backs for the remainder of the season, and then get your top candidate in the offseason so you're not saddled with someone another year? I hadn't thought about it. It does make sense. I suppose it could be an option. I don't know. It's definitely something to think about, though. I hadn't heard anybody bring that up. And I appreciate Dillon coming on and talking to us. He's always excellent when he's on, and he is going to be joining us maybe once a week, as much as once a week up until the season starts when he gets really busy. And I think next time he might join us from the Woody, which will be really cool, from practice. So thank you so much, Dillon. And follow him at Dillon Davis 56 on Twitter or X, whatever you call it. This Kadyn Proctor story is just blowing up here, and we're going to get to that. I got some thoughts on that. But first, a word from our sponsor. Hey, it's Juck, and MyBookie has some free cash for the Juck on Bucks audience. Open up an account today at MyBookie, and we're going to get a 50% deposit bonus of up to $1,000 in free bets with the promo code JUCK. If you're new to sportsbooks, this is a good one to start at. And if you're an old vet, they got everything we want. It's very simple to use. You can pull out your winnings instantly, and they have an extensive selection of wagering options, including straight bets, parlay bets across sports, odds boosts, and even free plays pop up every now and again. If you like props, they got a whole slew of those, and these guys even got a casino over at MyBookie. And to let us try that out, they got a $10 casino chip with our promo code JUCK. I like to bet some basketball during the tournament for a little bit of fun. I go a little heavier during football season, but no matter what your sport or your favorite wagering option is, you can find it at MyBookie. So open up your account today at MyBookie with the promo code JUCK, because betting is fun, but betting with somebody else's money is even more fun. Check them out. Actually, first, an update that just came through. So, Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that Florida Atlantic's Dusty May has agreed to become the next head coach at the University of Michigan. That is the guy that was the primary candidate we heard for the Buckeyes had they not hired Jake Diebler. So this is really going to be interesting now to see, does this guy end up becoming a great coach and Diebler flames out, and then you got a situation where people are really, really upset. Or does Diebler turn out to be the hero and this guy flames out? It's going to add a little extra spice to the rivalry in basketball. It definitely. I mean, that's really interesting. So the Bucks hired that guy, Dusty May. There you go. So the Kadyn Proctor situation, let's just go over the quick timeline. He is from Iowa, one of the best recruits they've ever had come out of the state of Iowa. He was committed to Iowa, ends up flipping to Alabama. Goes down to Alabama and starts on the offensive line as a tackle as a freshman, which is really, that's rare. It's so rare. He's a stud. He didn't have a fantastic year, but he's just a freshman. And the fact that you can start at Alabama as a freshman on the offensive line is pretty amazing. So Saban retires, and this kid decides he wants to go back home. And he does. He goes home and gets a hero's welcome. They're just crazy about the kid. Thank goodness he came back, blah, blah, blah. He gets a big deal with a local business, I'm assuming. Now, the way this article was, the update was written, so the Swarm, which is their NIL collective, said that he did get a deal, but it did not come from the boosters. So I guess we're going to assume it came from a local business. Anyway, he gets a big deal, $100,000, and then he goes on spring break and decides on spring break, with some of his old Alabama teammates that he is going to go back to Alabama. Now, he went up to Iowa, participated in winter workouts, so that's all he did with the team, and now he wants to go back to Alabama. And that's what he's going to do. And the college football world is pretty much split on this. There's a lot of folks arguing that players should have as much mobility as coaches, and then there's the other side that's saying this is absolutely ridiculous. How do you run a roster like this when you got guys that can just come and go just like this, back and forth? Like, this is ridiculous. I'm on the this is ridiculous side of this. I'm not. A lot of folks think he may have intentionally set this up to go, get money from Iowa and then leverage that to get more money from Alabama. I don't think it was anything calculated like that. I think the kid legitimately just changed his mind. But I don't think it should be that easy to just change your mind and do this, because it makes it almost impossible to run a roster if you're seeing this. And while I don't think that this kid did that to leverage money and make money, I do think that someone will see this and say, that's an option. And, you might see that coming up soon. But the kid's not going to give the money back, obviously. People are really salty about that. If you pay a player in this environment, knowing what this environment is, I mean, it's buyer beware. So that's on the business or whoever it was that paid this kid $100,000 to do whatever he did. I don't know. Maybe we'll see some more about that. But I want to talk about the kid transferring back. So when we talk about coach mobility, we have an example right now happening where Stan Drayton is under contract as the head coach at Temple. The Buckeyes want to bring Stan Drayton back to Columbus to be the running backs coach. There's mutual interest. Stan Drayton wants to come back, but there's a contract in place. There's $2.5 million owed to Stan Drayton. There are things tied up in this contract. He wants that money. And in some situations, Ohio State or whoever he would go to may want to, okay, we'll pay you a portion of that money. There's things in a contract that act as a deterrent for people just picking up and willy-nilly on a whim deciding to change their mind and do things like this and make decisions that affect a lot of other people. So coach mobility isn't like player mobility right now. Player mobility was nil. You had to sit out a year to transfer, and now the pendulum has swung to just absolutely do whatever the heck you want, whenever you want. And it's not feasible moving forward. You cannot have, this just can't happen. So I think that the good thing about this Kadyn Proctor situation is it was already, a fire has been lit under these guys and administrators to come to some kind of resolution on what they're going to pursue. What Nick Saban was trying to get was for Congress to assist them in being able to put stipulations on what these guys can do without making them employees, and that's just not going to fly. They're going to have to make them employees. They're going to have some kind of contracts with these guys to prevent this kind of stuff from happening, or we're going to see a whole lot more of it. And the coaches are already just up in arms about how are we supposed to run a roster. We don't even know. They go into signing day not knowing who they need to recruit, what positions they need to fill, because they got guys leaving in the transfer portal at the same time they've already finished their class. And now what if you lose 2 left tackles? Well, you didn't recruit 2 left tackles. You know what I mean? Like, it's impossible to do it like this. This is not sustainable. And I find what this kid did, like, I would never let my son do this. That's just insane. You don't jerk people around like that. Anyway, that's my take on it, but I don't think he tried to do it to swindle any money out of anybody. I think that's a bit much to think that he was that calculated to do that. Though, if you told me Jordan Seaton did it, I might believe you. But Kadyn Proctor going back to Alabama, not to play for Nick Saban, but to play for Kalen DeBoer, who was just signed to an 8-year contract with $88 million guaranteed. And Alabama has set themselves up for a potential Jimbo Fisher buyout situation if things don't go as planned with Kalen DeBoer. a guy from the Northwest all his life going down to Alabama. And I'm keeping a real close eye on what's going on down there because I have been saying all along, I think this guy's a really good coach, and I think that he's going to run a good program, but they are not going to be what they once were. They can be a top 5 program. They're not going to be a top 2, 3 program. That's not going to happen under him. And what I'm really looking at is the recruiting that's going on down there. And if we exclude the in-state guys from Alabama and just kind of take a look at the out-of-state recruiting, it's not starting off hot at all. Got 2 3-stars in the class, both nationally unranked, and 1 stud from Georgia that Alabama was his dream school. And that Alabama being people's dream schools is going to fade away unless he continues to win at that level, which I don't think he's going to. So interesting, though, when we think about the playoffs last year, and 3 of those 4 programs got a new coach going into next season, a whole new regime. You had Washington get Jed Fish from Arizona, but for this discussion, I don't think they're really applicable. But when you look at what Alabama did versus what Michigan did, Michigan, of course, stayed in-house and made the decision to go with Sherrone Moore. And I think that they made that decision thinking that Sherrone Moore would be able to keep quite a bit of that staff. He was not. He had to go hire his own new staff, and that's a nightmare scenario for Michigan and a guy learning on the job. Alabama goes and gets one of the hottest guys that they could have got on the market, but a lot of people doubt whether he's going to be able to do it down there. So really interesting to watch the 2 of them as we move forward and kind of compare and contrast, because you had 2 teams in the playoffs, both lose their coach, and we're going to be able to watch the timeline and see who does what and kind of compare them to each other. And I'm very interested in that. Ohio State promoted Ryan Day without even interviewing another candidate. I wasn't happy about that when it happened, but there wasn't really any other candidates out there, obvious candidates that, Matt Campbell of Iowa State was floated at the time, and there just wasn't any big names that it looked like they could have gone after. And I don't know. I sure wanted a couple of interviews to be conducted, and I wasn't too happy that it was just passed on to Ryan Day. I didn't think that was the right way to go. Not that I thought it was a bad hire. I don't know. I thought it should have been a little more competitive when we're talking about the Ohio State head coaching position. So we'll see. But Kirk Herbstreit, man, let me tell you guys. Kirk Herbstreit had a big, long tweet to Florida State fans today. He got another troll message. So the Florida State fans hate Kirk Herbstreit because they think that he influenced the decision of Alabama getting chosen over undefeated Florida State to make it into the playoff. And they don't think that he was nefarious about it. They just think that the words that he said, consistently saying that Alabama deserved it, were influential in that decision being made. So they hate him, and they troll him incessantly. And today I saw Kirk write a long two-page novel to the Florida State idiots that troll him on Twitter. And this is like the 4th or 5th time I've seen him do this. I have never seen someone so sensitive on social media as Kirk Herbstreit, and I've never seen someone go about trying to deal with trolls in such a horrible way. As if these heartfelt messages to the Florida State fans telling them that he's always loved the Florida State Seminoles, and he loved them since Bobby Bowden, and he loves Coach Mike Norvell, and he's sorry that they disagreed, but this is just how he saw it, and it's his educated opinion. They don't give a damn, and you're just adding fuel to their fire and making them want to do this more because you're showing them how much you're bothered by this. And I just don't understand it. This is like the 4th or 5th time he's done this. Are none of his friends telling him this? Can someone send Kirk Juck on Bucks and let him hear that? Kirk, stop it. They are getting under your skin, and they know it. It's never going to stop if you keep this up. 4 or 5 times he's now apologized to them for their disagreement. I don't have any idea why he's trying to justify himself. However, I wasn't doing my show at that point. I agree with the Florida State fans. I did not like that decision at all. I thought it was unjust. And the reason I didn't like it is because, to me, that could have been Ohio State. We had Kirk Barton on, and we talked about the 06 and 07 championship. And, the next 5 years after that, the reputation the Big Ten had because of those games, the reputation Ohio State had because of those games, we could have been an undefeated team that they would have screwed like that. I didn't like the precedent that sent. I really hated it. But that system's over. But that's the reason I didn't like it. So I was kind of with the Florida State fans. But boy, the way they've treated Kirk Herbstreit has been pretty bad. I'm not saying he didn't deserve any of it. I do think he actively campaigned very, very hard for that. And I do think he is influential to a lot of people when it comes to college football, particularly the folks on that panel that, a lot of those guys, there's a lot of people there that don't know football in the way that even we know football. They really don't. These are people in education. They're ADs and stuff like they're involved in sports, but they're bureaucrats. They're not involved in sports like we are. So, some of the criteria that they listed is just ridiculous. And I just didn't agree with the decision. I didn't. I think you got an undefeated team from a power conference who won their conference championship. You don't have the right to now say we're going to say who's the best team because I think it's the best team when you've not ever done that before. Because if you were doing that before, there were some times when Ohio State was definitely better than some of the playoff teams but got left out because they lost a game and slipped up. So you don't just get to pick and choose when you apply that criteria. That's what bothered me the most. The picking and choosing of when you're going to apply that criteria. Now, of course, I wanted Alabama to get in there and beat Michigan, which I thought they would. And that's not what happened, as we know. Anyway, I always catch myself rambling towards the end of the show. So that'll do it for our Sunday Juck on Bucks episode. We've got practice coming up this week, 3 practices. Please like and subscribe. We're coming up on 2 months on Tuesday. I'm really excited that I've kept it going strong for 2 months. We've continued to grow. I get some wonderful comments from you guys, and I really appreciate those so much. We got everything going on in podcast form, and you can find the show in podcast anywhere you podcast. I upload every single one. It's way easier than doing the video stuff. I got to tell you that. So yeah, those are always up there. If you want to catch them on your run, like my buddy Luke, who's the one that talked me into doing the show, he likes to do podcasts. You can do it too, like Luke. So, hey, appreciate you guys, and I will catch you tomorrow. Juck on Bucks out. I think that he's going to do it. And, a little bit of perspective. If that kick goes in, this segment sucks. Whole segment sucks. Segment sucks.